Death Note Killer Within is the newest Death Note game, of which there are very few. While the previous games were mainly text-based strategy games, Killer Within takes in a new direction, similar to other multiplayer murder mystery games like Town of Salem and Among Us. However, it does include a multitude of new mechanics that set itself apart from other games of the genre, as well as adding a specific Death Note twist. That being said, Killer Within is nowhere near perfect and has some flaws that leave me with mixed feelings. So, let's take a deeper dive into Death Note Killer Within. While Killer Within can be compared to games like Among Us, it is much more complex with its own systems and mechanics that target a completely different audience than Among Us does. There are 4 roles to play. There's one Kira follower, and one L, while the rest of the players are all investigators. The goal of Kira and his follower is to either kill L or fill up their New World meter. The goal of L and his investigators is to arrest Kira or fill up their investigation meter. Sounds similar to your typical murder mystery game, but the process for killing investigators and completing tasks is much more complicated. In order to kill as Kira, you must steal someone's ID, or have your follower steal and then give you someone's ID. In order to steal an ID, you must stand close to another player for a couple of seconds. The idea then is that if you are an investigator, you can mark someone down in your journal if they're standing close to you for an extended period of time. However, a task as an investigator is to investigate another player, which also requires you to stand next to them for a couple of seconds. At the end of each round, you'll hold a meeting where you'll find out if your ID was stolen or not. From there, you and the other investigators must try and figure out who stole any IDs. If Kira or Kira's follower are arrested, then any contraband items, such as the IDs or the Death Note itself, will be revealed. However, there's a level of strategy to this as well. If Kira believes he's going to be arrested, then he can pass off the Death Note to his follower, so when he's arrested, it won't reveal his identity. If any player, including investigators, are arrested, then their name will be revealed, and they'll be handcuffed to whichever player arrested them. This player is chosen by L at the beginning of the meeting. There are a number of other mechanics, such as security cameras which can be set up by L and his investigators, special joint investigations, Kira broadcasts, etc. It's very clearly more complicated than Among Us. In that game, anyone can jump in and instantly understand how to play, which just isn't true for this game. I played Killer Within with 3 of my friends, and they all quit after a couple of rounds because they didn't want to spend the time learning the intricacies of the game. I think once you've played a fair amount of games, you'll understand, and will eventually be able to come up with your own strategies and plans, but it's definitely not an easy jump in and play casual game. If you want to properly play it, then you need to spend some time learning the mechanics. And don't get me wrong, this isn't a bad thing at all. It's cool to have a game like that. I just think you need to know what you're getting yourself into. Aside from the difficulty, the barrier to entry is surprisingly a cheap $10. I think this is a very fair price for a game of this quality. My only issue with it is the already incessant monetization tactics. This game already has 2 battle passes, which granted do have free tracks, but also have premium tracks. In addition to the premium battle passes, there are already specific microtransactions for costumes and other cosmetics, which if they're going to be this in your face about it, why not just make the game free to play? It's already suffering from a small player base, with about 500 to 1,000 players on Steam, so why not just make it free to play so that more people play your game? Then the microtransactions will be more enticing since you didn't already spend money to play the game. Or at least lower the price slightly to about $5, which is what Among Us is priced at. While the monetization is annoying, I do have to admit that this game's pricing is much better than the majority of other games out there. The first reaction a lot of people had to Killer Within's reveal was being surprised about the art direction, but I think it's pretty neat. The concept of Killer Within is that Light and L are playing a board game against each other, and each character is represented by a small figure. This is a direct reference to the anime, where these same types of figures are used by Nier. This also leads to a lot of character customization, allowing you to change your figure's look, albeit my only nitpick is that a lot of the free skins are consistent with the figure look, but the premium skins use a different art style. Rather than being a board game piece, they look like Nendroids, which just creates an unnecessary contrast. In addition to the creative art direction, there are also a number of pretty fun animations that take place depending on what happens in the game, such as one of the figures approaching a noose when they're killed with the Death Note. There are also some cool looking animations of Light and L themselves that take place before and after each match. Another great positive is the plethora of Death Note references. There's certain cosmetics that are direct references to Death Note, such as a bag of chips accessory and a skin of L eating cake. In addition, there are a lot of voice lines and dialogue options that are just needlessly edgy that really feel like Death Note. While I do like the animation and art style, the graphic quality itself could be a bit better, as it currently leans on the cheaper side of things. The online is where we run into the most issues, the most obvious problem being that if one player disconnects, then the entire match ends. These are matches that are for up to 10 players, and if only one of them leaves, then the entire game ends. I feel like this has a pretty simple fix too. If Kira leaves, then the follower gets the death note. If L leaves, then an investigator becomes L. And when I mention up to 10 players, you most definitely want to get as close to 10 as possible. I played a 4-player game, which is the minimum number of players to start a match, and it was terrible. It becomes a 2v2, so all Kira has to do is kill one person and then they've already won. The positive of the online is that there's crossplay between PlayStation and Steam, which helps with a smaller player base. However, there is no cross-region, which I can kind of understand, but I feel like this is only necessary because if one player lags out, then the entire match will just end. I think if they just remove the feature that ends the entire game if only one person leaves, then the online would be a much more pleasant experience. At its core, Death Note Killer Within is a pretty solid game. The gameplay is an interesting take on the multiplayer murder mystery genre, and it's full of fun references to the source material. You do need to be willing to learn the rather complicated mechanics, but if you put the time in, it can be a rewarding experience. Of course, it does have its flaws. Considering the amount of monetization and premium cosmetics, it would have been a better decision to simply make the game free to play, which would have also helped its small player count. It also has unnecessary problems with its online, such as the game ending after simply one player leaves, and region locking matches for seemingly no reason. All that being said, Death Note Killer Within was a surprising release with a lot of potential. I just hope that it's able to fix a lot of its issues before its own name is written in the Death Note.